Hello, so I've been doing these videos the past couple of days, close up like this. Things will return to normal tomorrow. Actually been so incredibly busy the past few days, it's actually been maddening. I was on the phone for over 4 hours a day. I answered nearly 80 emails today, and I had to work on my book, and I actually, have to do things to pay the bills, and that has nothing to do with making these videos. So ghosts and photography, I don't literally mean taking pictures of ghosts, but there's a lot of people that believe that if you can't measure it, it doesn't exist. And these are, of course, nihilists, and they believe the same thing in photography. Of course, photography is an art form first and foremost. The measure baiters, of course, love to sniff the buttons all day long, and I have to do that to review cameras and lenses. But first and foremost, I recognize, what fundamentally photography is meant to get down to. I want to mention 4 different things because there's always been a debate these many years, especially among the crayon-eating, knuckle-dragging, mental midgets on basically the world's photography forums. They actually believe that, and micro-contrast, by the way, as I've said before, is the most horrible word ever because it's pretty meaningless. It should be called image fidelity. Okay, I'm going to point out 4 really important things to you that if you ever get into a debate or you want to have a discussion on the existence of image fidelity, or what everybody else calls micro-contrast, or it's also been called Zeiss pop for ages, and it's also been called the Leica look. Leica look has nothing to do, well, actually it has very, very little to do with the sensor. Actually, one thing that Leica does is order their sensors with a weak color filter array, okay? Weak color filter array. And when the color filter array is weak, what that does is it lets more light in. A typical color filter array cuts about a stop to a stop and a third of light. That's a fact. And by making that color filter array weak, it lets in more low-gain intertonal detail. But ultimately, the Leica look is not about the damn cameras at all. It's about the lenses, and that's the same reason why people say Zeiss pop. But there's a couple really important aspects of image fidelity, or what you want to call micro-contrast. If you ever get in a debate with people, they think, and I've seen this said before, if you can't measure it, it doesn't exist. Well, stepping outside of photography for just 1 second, the entire world has, for the past endless millennia, has spun off its axis again and again from humanity due to things that are absolutely immeasurable, like love, hope, faith, hatred. There's all these things that make life worth living and also makes life miserable, and has been the source for every war and every conflict. And these things are immeasurable. I mean, there's not a single person on this earth stupid enough to say that those things don't exist, do they? It's like, does love, hate, hope? Because without hope, what's the use in living? Who's going to measure hope? Have you ever seen a scientist, show you hope in a beaker? Here we got 2 milliliters of hope. No, you haven't. Image fidelity does exist. Let me point out something really key to you. I think it's the IMX 461. I might have that designation wrong, but that's the new 150 megapixel Sony sensor that is monochrome. It's the monochrome version of the new 150. There's also a new 100 megapixel version of that sensor also made by Sony. That's the GFX format, but it's not made for Fujifilm, but they have a monochrome version of that sensor also. Now, that really large monochromatic sensor, you can't see color light at all. Do you think that, like, Sony and Phase 1 that sell this $50,000 back, doesn't include a lens and it's not the camera, it's just the damn back. Do you really think that if, like, image fidelity or micro-contrast didn't exist, that monochromatic sensor exists for a reason? Without the color filter array, you just get these crotch-melting monochromatic images because it lets in a lot more low-gain intertonal detail. Yes, image fidelity, aka micro-contrast, does exist. It's the same reason why Phase 1 sells that $50,000 plus monochromatic back, and the reason why Sony makes that monochromatic back. It's the same reason Leica makes a monochrome camera. It's because it lets in more light. A color filter array, the key word in there is filter. And last I recalled, filters cut light. Yes, they do. Color filter array, like I said, cuts a stop to stop and a third of light. Yeah. You've never seen a true black and white image until you've seen a true monochrome image. They're just incredible. Here's the other reason. When you use a speed light or a studio strobe, it's like, well, that's sensor saturation, right? Yeah, everybody knows that you get this amazing colorful pop, even if you take just the cameras, the images straight out of camera. And the reason for that is the low gain intertonal detail is raised up with much better gain. That strikes, there's nothing like flash photography. There's a reason why 95% of professional photography is flash photography. There's instances of professional photography you can't do flash photography, you know, sports action, wildlife for obvious reasons, but product shots, commercial, portraiture, fashion, on and on. It's flash photography. Why is it flash photography? If all these cameras today are just high ISO winners, which they are high ISO winners, then why the hell do you need flash photography? You just drag that saturation slider and the contrast and the exposure slider in Lightroom, Photoshop, or Capture One. This is because that pulse from the xenon tube does something to that low gain and mid gain, your speculars and your midtones and your shadows, especially where you have a lot to work with. Yeah, it brings up that signal to noise ratio floor way the hell up. Even the shadows are lifted. You know that old saying where a high tide raises all ships? Well, when you use a xenon bulb, which doesn't matter if it's a studio strobe or a speed light, they're xenon bulbs. When you pop that xenon bulb on your subject, the speculars, of course you don't want to clip your highlights, of course, but everything is raised. That is image fidelity. Flash photography, the reason why flash photography makes things pop, you know, I don't know how long you've been in photography, but everybody says flash photography makes things pop. That's the same thing people are calling Zeiss pop. Except that pop comes from a high transmission, in most cases, low element count lens with really, really good transmissive characteristics. Yes, that's correct. Yeah, that's the reason why these 30 element plus lenses don't... Now, there is a way to actually overcome these super high element count lenses and the fact that they've absorbed too much low-gain intertonal detail, so the low-gain signals and the shadows and the midtones don't make it to the sensor. The way you get around that is with a speed light. A xenon tube, be it studio or a speed light, they're all the same thing. They're all damn xenon tubes. Ever notice if you slightly underexpose your shot and you didn't do ETTR photography, i.e. sensor saturation, i.e. exposing to the right, no matter what you do in Lightroom or Photoshop, you can do a lot. Everything just looks muddy. Yeah, you know what a muddy shot looks like. Everybody's seen a muddy shot, right? Yeah, that's because those midtones, those lower end midtones, and the shadows especially, the signal to noise ratio didn't make it to proper sensor saturation for captured detail. And God, this is the reason too why you need to be shooting raw always. You don't have that information in a damn JPEG. Microcontrast, horrible word, i.e. image fidelity, is as real as a heart attack. Can you measure it? No. Can you measure hope and love? It's like, do you got a child? Yeah, I do. Do you love your child? I love her very much. I love my little Sally. Prove it! You know, unless you could stick it on a scale or stick it underneath a microscope, it doesn't exist. You know, when people say stuff like that, I look at them and I think, if sometimes I actually say, it's like, you're an idiot. You know, you only believe in stuff you can measure. The entire world works off shit you can't measure. But you think microcontrast is like some sort of like unicorn dust or a leprechaun fart or, you know, a dragon's tooth, you know? Yeah, you can't measure that stuff. I don't think microcontrast... Of course it exists! What the hell do you think monochromatic sensors exist for? What the hell do you think speed lights and studio strobes make things pop? Like, wow, it jumps off the page. Yeah, it's called image fidelity. It's what we call Zeiss pop. This is the same thing with Leica look. The Leica look is about the lenses. 95% about the lenses. This is the reason why you do sensor saturation, i.e. ETTR, exposed to the right. You don't get muddy images. You've taken advantage of the full dynamic range of your camera. Instead of, if the dynamic range of my camera is I got a really expensive camera with this much dynamic range, but I thought I'm going to underexpose it and end up using this. Well, why don't you just use your damn cell phone? You bought an expensive camera that can do this, but you only used this much. Once again, that is why 95% of professional photography is flash photography. So yes, can't measure it? Does it exist? Yeah, it damn well does exist. Same way that love and faith and hope, all these things exist, and they make the world go round. I don't believe that shit exists. I can't measure it. I can't weigh it. I can't take a slide rule to it. Does it exist? Yeah. People that think that they're idiots. They just are just flat out idiots. So there we go. I hope you liked this video. If you did, you can always click the link below. Tell me how much you hate me. But in this video, you're not going to refute me because you can't. It's not possible. Peace out.